Hello, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. I wanted to try to find a fun tag to do for Tag Tuesday that was spring related because, well, spring hasn't really sprung in quite a few different places this year yet. But today, for one day only, it has sprung here in Vegas, and it just feels wonderful and beautiful outside, and I'm hoping it lasts, but it keeps every few days cooling back off again. One thing though that I love is my rose bush is in full bloom, and it is just elevating my mood every day. The tag that I found was online, and it's an online blog site that posted it. It was created by Veronika and Sabrina at Wordy and Whimsical. If you end up doing this tag, please let me know so that I can watch your video. Also, if you don't make videos or you don't feel like making this particular video, please feel free to answer any of the questions that are on here. I would love to hear your answers. Roses are traditionally given as an expression of love. What's your favorite romance in a book? I don't know what that means. Are they asking what my favorite trope is, or what aspect of romance I like to read in books? I'm not really sure. Now, I don't read a lot of romance novels to begin with, but just in any book in general, when it comes to romance, something that really resonates with me is the companionship part of romance. I know it probably sounds boring, but that's what really gets me going, is the companionship part. And if I can learn something from a book about relationships, whether it be how to communicate or, just how I can grow and be better as a spouse or a lover. I definitely don't think I'm a perfect person and always want to improve as a spouse. I guess that's my favorite part, is just reading about relationships and romances in books. But not a complete romance novel so much, because they tend to get a little cheesy for my taste. Stargazer lilies are named for their blooms that face toward the sky. Who is your favorite ambitious character? I just read this book. The protagonist in this book, her name is Shay. And Shay has a website called, I think it's called, if I remember correctly, The Book of Cold Cases. And she does a deep dive into different cold cases and has a group of people on there that try to help her figure out what really happened. She is so ambitious. She wants to solve these cold cases, and she's willing to put her safety and her life on the line to find out what really happened. Peace lilies are known for being one of the easier houseplants to care for. What is a book you think anyone could love? I really had to think hard about that. What's a book anybody would love? And I did come up with one. The Orphan Train by Christina Baker Kline. Let me know if you've read this and what you think of it. So what happened was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was during the Great Depression. All these people could not afford to care for their children. And instead of putting them up for adoption like we do now, they would put them on a train that would just travel from, I think it was from New York. I don't remember if it went all the way across the country or just to a certain part of the country. But at each stop, anyone that wanted these kids could just take them. No background check, nothing. They could just take the kids. Wow, that sounds so much easier for people that want to adopt a child, right? But what about the child? What about what happens to the child? This book goes into the experience of a few of these orphans. I think the psychological part of the book was spectacular. The storylines were spectacular. And on top of it, if you're a fan of nonfiction or you're a fan of history, this would be a good book because this actually happened. So that's even more fascinating. There's a bunch of documentaries and websites and all kinds of information about these orphans and what they went through. And some of them are trying to find their biological family and so on and so forth. But this is a crazy ride of a book. Chrysanthemums are given on Mother's Day in Australia. Who is your favorite fictional mother? This is another book I just read. I'm not going to pull this one out because it's in there kind of tight. But Little Women. The mother in Little Women, Marmee, she is spectacular. She is a wise woman who is nurturing, and she gives her daughters space to make their own decisions on who they want to be. And she really nurtures their independent spirit in a time when women weren't really supposed to be independent. And I just thought it's just kind of a badass that way, just raising her daughters to go after the lives they want and to be who they wanted to be in a time when that was frowned upon. Spider plants are easy to propagate. What is a hyped up book that you love? The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This is a really good book. This is a historical fiction book about World War II and what a certain family went through, two sisters. And I thought it was amazing. And I have to say, as good as I thought it was, I now think it's even better. And sometimes I feel like I should do a review after I read a book when I'm real fresh on what I thought of it. And then maybe another review months later after I've had a chance to really let it marinate in my mind and in my soul. And this book is one of those books that now I think is better than I did after I read it. This book is still with me. I think about it on a regular basis. And to me, that is the mark of a really, really good book. Lily of the Valley is pretty but poisonous. Share a book with a beautiful cover that was actually disappointing. Okay, I don't have this book. Well, I don't know if I ever did. I think I listened to it on audiobook, but it was The Project by Courtney Summers. I love this cover. I could look at it for a long time. There's a lot of detail in it, and it's beautiful, and it's kind of creepy looking too. I had a hard time getting into it, and it just felt like it just kept dragging out, and I lost interest about halfway through. Orchids are one of the oldest flower types known to man. What's your favorite classic novel? Can I reach it? I would have to say my favorite is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I don't know how many times I've read this book. For about 20 years, I used to read it every year at the end of summer. And I haven't read it in about 4 or 5 years, but I want to start reading it again every year. I just love the memories of being a kid. I really love the relationship that these siblings had with each other. The sibling dynamic was good. I like the relationship that the siblings had with their dad. And in this book, Atticus Finch he's just a very good role model for his kids, and he's a very good dad. Peonies require lots of care. Share a bookish friendship that was caring and supportive. The Life We Bury by Alan Eskens. This book is about a college student named Joe who gets an assignment in an English class where he's got to write a biography about someone that he interviews. And most people in the class are interviewing family members. Well, he doesn't have a very good family or a very close family. I think, if I remember correctly, the only one left in his family is his mom, and they don't have a good relationship. So he decides to go to a convalescent center nearby and find out if there's anybody there that he can interview. And somebody working there has this idea that, well, actually there is somebody really fascinating that you could interview. He was convicted of murder, and he's only got a little while to live, and so we brought him over here so he could, pass away in peace instead of being in prison when he passes away. So he's kind of freaked out. He goes to meet this guy, Carl, and they develop this friendship. And he starts thinking maybe Carl wasn't the one that killed this person. Maybe Carl's innocent and maybe justice really hasn't been served. And so he sets out to find out what really happened. And he puts his safety and his life on the line just to clear his friend's name. And I just don't see any better way, or more intense way, I should say, of proving that you really care about your friend than putting your life on the line to clear their name. Hyacinths have a sweet, lingering fragrance. What's the sweetest novel you've ever read? Well, I don't know if you would call this a novel or not. It's some short stories, but for me it would be, it's Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. This book is so sweet and beautiful. And if you haven't read it, I really recommend it, especially if you are feeling like you're a negative Nancy or something. This is a book to just cheer you up and put you right back into a positive mindset again. Tulips are bright, popular, and showy. Who's your favorite larger-than-life character? Okay. I would have to say right now it's Mickey Bollitar, which is the character that I keep raving about in the Mickey Bollitar series that Harlan Coben wrote, or is writing. I think the series is still going. He's still writing more books for it. But Mickey Bollitar he's larger than life because he's very tall, for starters. He's 6'4", and he's a teenager, so he might get taller. He's an athlete. He had a very different childhood. He had parents that were on the road a lot, trying to solve different crimes, I guess is the best way to say it. I don't want to ruin the books for you in case you want to read them. So he moved around a lot, and he was not in America very much. He was all over the world as a small child. And then when he got into high school, his parents decided that maybe it was time to settle down and stay in one place for his high school years. And so they moved to this town, and he starts high school. And that's when, as a reader, we meet him in book 1. And he is very curious about other teenagers and friendships because he just hasn't really experienced a lot of this. Every time he makes friends with somebody, he's got to move away again. And he's very vulnerable too. He's just such a beautiful character, and he's very strong, and he's very brave, and he's smart, and he's got my favorite quality in a person. He has integrity. Certain types of water lilies are difficult to eradicate. What is a novel that has stood the test of time and remained your favorite through the years? This one's going to be a little bit surprising because I mentioned I'm not a romance novel fan, but I got this book when I was 14. And the main character is a woman named Christmas. She was born on Christmas Day, and they call her Christy. And her last name is Knight, so the title of the book is her name. And as you see, this was a Harlequin temptation book. I bought it when it was a new release, and I read it and loved it, and I have read it almost every year at Christmas time since. In this book, Christy is a down-on-her-luck photographer, and there's a new mall being built, and she decides that she wants to be the photographer that takes pictures of kids sitting on Santa's lap. So she dresses up as an elf, she goes to the mall, and she meets the guy that's going to run the mall. His name is Adam, and they fall in love. But she's got wonderful parents, and just this, it's just such a beautiful, heartwarming story, and it's a great way to get into the spirit of Christmas. He's a little bit of a Scrooge, and she brings him out of it. She warms up his heart, and it's just a very sweet, beautiful story. If you are interested in that kind of story, I definitely recommend doing a Google search and seeing if you can find it, or maybe try Better World Books or eBay or something. But this book, I really liked it. And if it looks super shiny, it's because the cover kept trying to come apart, and I covered it in tape, and then I had to cover the inside with tape, and then I had to wrap it around because the cover started falling off. I mean, this book has been well loved over the years. Lavender has many uses, from landscaping and food to cosmetics and essential oils. Name a book you love that fits in more than one genre. Okay. My answer is a book that I think could fit into so many genres. It is 1984 by George Orwell. Have you read this book? If you have, you probably would agree with me that it could be more than one type. So I sat down and thought about it for a few minutes, and I wrote down the different spots that I think you could find it in Barnes & Noble. You could find it in the science fiction section, the political science section, the dystopian section, the psychological thriller section, because this book scared me on a psychological level, and I'm not kidding. And it still scares me just thinking about it. You could find it under literary fiction because it is a modern day classic. And I think you could find it in the nonfiction section. And the reason I say this is you could find it in a how-to/guide section because it is kind of a guide on how to survive in a government that is like so much of the world is right now. And I think you might also find it in the social sciences section. Or if there's a section for prophetic novels, you could probably even put it there because, well, a lot of what he says in this book is happening. So, if you've read this, what genre or genres would you say it is? Because it is a really hard question to answer. I just don't know. And that is it for my flower tag. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to let me know what you thought of any of these books in the comments, or like I said earlier, let me know what your answers to any of these are. I would love to hear them. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Happy reading. Bye.